It is a curious thing that the human mind, when once startled by some grotesque incident of life, retains the picture long after the facts of the case have passed into shadow. Such was my experience with the affair, which Holmes afterwards referred to, with some wry amusement, as the adventure of the cardboard box. Even now, when the fire burns low in Baker Street and the fog of the great city presses heavily against the window panes, I find my thoughts turning back to that peculiar summer's morning when the whole matter was first brought to our attention. As was often the case, the scene is indelibly etched in my memory because it began in the most commonplace fashion. London was suffocating under one of those stretches of oppressive heat which seem almost alien to our northern clime. The city lay topid beneath a haze of smoke and dust, the pavements shimmering and the very handsome cabs moving more languidly than usual. Yet inside our sitting room at 2211B Baker Street, the energy of Sherlock Holmes was as brisk and alert as ever, his keen eyes glinting as he bent over a scrap of paper. Holmes, do you never weary of peering at those little fragments of humanity that others would dismiss as trifles?
My dear Watson, it is precisely in trifles that the great issues lie hidden. A footprint in clay, a smear of ash upon cloth, the turn of a hand when sealing a letter, all trifles, and yet from them the whole edifice of crime may be rebuilt.
His long, thin fingers fluttered the scrap of paper with something of a musician's delicacy before laying it down. I had intended to distract him further with my musings upon the heat and the decay of London manners when Mrs. Hudson's knock sounded at the door. She entered bearing a small package.
Place it here, Mrs. Hudson, if you please.
The good woman complied, however trailing ass, remarking with housewifely indignation upon the slovenly state of the parcel. It was indeed most carelessly wrapped, a mere cardboard box tied loosely with twine and stained with seawater. Holmes, with the same serene precision which he brought to every investigation, drew a penknife across the twine and folded back the cardboard flaps. Hmm, good heavens, The exclamation was wrung from me by sheer instinct, right? For within the box lay a small layer of coarse salt, and embedded within that sinister bed were two human ears, severed, discolored, good, and most horribly real. This is monstrous. Holmes, what fiend could send such an abomination?
Steady, Watson, steady. Horror clouds the judgment. Let us observe first and speculate later.
He drew the box nearer, his lean face alight with scientific curiosity, rather than any sign of disgust. Picking up a magnifying glass, he bent over the grisly trophies, tracing their outlines as though they were some rare specimens from a naturalist's cabinet.
Observe, Watson. The edges are ragged, suggesting the clumsy work of a coarse blade rather than the clean severance of a surgeon's scalpel. And note here, the earlobes are pierced. Earrings once adorned them. That speaks of femininity.
Then these poor victims were women?
Not entirely. This one, though pierced, is of larger proportion, and the cartilage is thicker. Likely a man? Thus, we have a male and female, both mutilated, both consigned together to this singular, salt-lined coffin.
It chins the blood. But surely, Holmes, this is no ordinary crime.
Indeed, my dear fellow, and yet every extraordinary crime has at its base the simplest of motives. Our task is to strip away the grotesque trappings until the motive stands revealed, plain as a skeleton in the sun.
Emus, I confess that my nerves, so often steadied by his composure, then strained to their utmost. The ghastliness of the exhibit, set so incongruously upon our breakfast table, seemed like some nightmare intrusion into domestic peace. Holmes, however, remained serenely intent, carefully removing the ears and laying them upon a sheet of paper. He then sifted the salt through his fingers.
Common, coarse salt, the sort sold at any seaport. See here, these darker grains, tar residue, I believe, suggests handling aboard ship or at least near a dockyard.
Then, the parcel may have been posted from the coast.
Most likely, and the handwriting upon the address may confirm it.
He held up the lid of the box where the address had been clumsily scrawled in a cramped hand. I bent over to read it, and my heart gave a leap, for it was not Holmes's name, as so many of our cases began, but rather that of one of our own neighbors in Croydon. Miss Susan Cushing, Cross Street, Croydon. Why, Holmes, she's a retired governess, if memory serves.
Just so, Watson. A woman of quiet and irreproachable habits. One wonders why the Furies should have selected her for their messenger. But let us waste no more time in conjecture. Fetch your hat. We shall pay Miss Cushing a call at once.
And thus, with the summer sun beating fiercely upon the pavements, we were soon rattling away in a cab towards the suburbs. I could not but remark upon the contrast between our errand and the brightness of the day. Children played in the road, the shopkeepers leaned idly at their doors, and yet in my pocket lay the box with its dreadful contents, muffled in newspaper. Do you truly believe that poor Miss Cushing has any part in this?
Not in the least. But she may provide the thread which will lead us through this labyrinth. Crime rarely strikes at random, Watson. There is always some connection, however slight, between victim and messenger.
Upon reaching the modest residence in Croydon, we were admitted by a trim maid-servant and soon ushered into a parlour where Miss Susan Cushing herself awaited us. She was a woman of middle years, plain in feature but kindly of expression, and she looked at us with mild surprise.
Gentlemen, you must forgive the untidiness of the room. I was not expecting visitors. May I inquire your business?
It is a matter of some delicacy, Miss Cushing. You received, I believe, a parcel this morning?
Indeed I did, sir. A horrid thing. A box with pieces of, well, I can hardly bring myself to mention them. I carried it at once to the authorities, and they advised that someone of skill should examine it. Might you be connected with Scotland Yard?
We have had some small dealings with them. Permit me to introduce myself, Sherlock Holmes. This is my friend, Dr. Watson.
Oh, Mr. Holmes! Why, I have read of your cases in the papers. Then perhaps you can make some sense of this ghastly jest, for surely it can be nothing else.
You regard it as a jest?
What else could it be? I have lived a quiet life, sir. I have no enemies in the world. Why should anyone wish to harm me?
A most pertinent question. Pray tell us of your household, Miss Cushing.
It is only myself and my two sisters, sir. Sir. Though, to be exact, we are somewhat estranged at present. Sarah resides in Penge with her husband, while Mary has of late gone to Liverpool. We are not upon the friendliest of terms.
And why is that, if I may venture?
Mary made what I cannot but regard as a most unfortunate marriage. The man is beneath her, a seafaring fellow of intemperate habits. I forbade him my house, and Mary took offence. We have not spoken these 6 months.
Holmes leaned forward at this disclosure, his eyes narrowing with sudden interest.
A seafaring man, you say? That is highly suggestive. Did he ever frequent your home in Croydon before the quarrel?
Once or twice, but never welcomed. He was coarse of manner, and I feared his influence upon my sister.
And Mary resides now in Liverpool?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Miss Cushing. You have given us precisely the clue we needed.
Holmes, you cannot mean that.
Hush, Watson. All in good time.
I could scarcely repress my amusement at Holmes's sudden certainty. Tipo, right. But long experience had taught me that he never revealed his hand until the proper moment. After a few further polite inquiries, we took our leave of Miss Cushing, who seemed much relieved that the matter was in such capable hands. As we stepped once more into the glare of the Croydon road, I seized the first opportunity to demand an explanation. Holmes, surely you cannot have solved it already?
My dear Watson, when the pieces of a puzzle fit together so neatly, one must only supply the missing link. The seafaring husband in Liverpool, the salt in which the grisly relics were packed, the estrangement between sisters. These are not coincidences. And they are inevitabilities.
But two seawardiers, Holmes, what conceivable motive could such a man have?
Motive is the finer veil, Watson. Once we draw it aside, the figure behind will be plain. I believe our next step must be a visit to Scotland Yard.
And so, with my mind in a whirl of conjecture, we turned our cab citywards once more, the heat pressing upon us, and the shadow of the case lengthening with every mile. The cab rattled us back through the steaming streets of London, Holmes sitting bolt upright, his hawk like features intent upon his own reflections, while I, less confident of his swift leaps of reasoning, stared out upon the passing throng. At length, we descended upon the familiar grey facade of Scotland Yard and were shown into the office of Inspector Lestrade, that shrewd, wiry little man with whom we had crossed swords and shared triumphs more than once.
Well, well, Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, you arrive in the nick of time. We have quite the puzzle on our hands this morning, and I dare say it will tax even your wits.
You refer, of course, to the cardboard box received by Miss Susan Cushing.
Just so. You've heard then.
Heard, seen, touched, and smelt. I have even weighed the salt in my fingers.
With a grunt. I might have known you'd be before me again. But I warn you, Holmes, this one is ugly. Severed human ears. What do you make of it?
I make of it that we must first determine whose ears they were and from whence they came. Without identity, all else is fog.
Surely the police surgeons can aid in that respect.
They can tell us the ears are genuine, and that's about the end of it. They belong to a man and a woman. So much is certain. But London holds more than 2 million souls, which pair among them are missing their ears. Is not so easily answered.
And yet the answer lies close at hand. The salt, the handwriting, the address to Miss Cushing. All these point to one quarter.
And what quarter is that?
Liverpool.
Lestrade gave a sharp laugh, though not wholly of amusement.
Liverpool. That's a wide field, Holmes. Half the sailors of the Empire pass through her docks.
Wide fields may yield rich harvests, Inspector, if one knows where to sow. Pray tell me, have you inquired into Miss Cushing's family?
Family? No. Why should we?
Because, Lestrade, crimes of passion seldom strike at random. Miss Cushing's sister Mary married a Liverpool seaman. Their estrangement, her residence, and the salt in which these relics were packed combined to form a chain more telling than any link of steel.
By George, Holmes, you might be right. I'll send a wire to Liverpool this very moment.
The inspector bustled off to dispatch his telegram, while Holmes paced the small office with a quick, nervous stride that betrayed the energy surging within him. Holmes, I cannot follow you so swiftly. What possible motive could this sailor have for dispatching such a ghastly parcel to his sister-in-law?
Think, Watson, the sending of mutilated remains is a message, a brutal epistle. It is less about the horror itself and more about whom that horror is meant to strike. Miss Susan Cushing, the recipient, was estranged from her sister precisely on account of this seafaring husband. Can you not perceive the symbolism?
You suggest then that the sailor has slain his wife and perhaps another and sent their ears as token to the sister who condemned the marriage?
Hmm? Precisely. Or at least that is the hypothesis upon which we must work until better evidence supplants it.
At that moment, Lestrade returned, his face flushed with official zeal.
The wire is gone. I've asked Liverpool police to search for any reports of missing persons, particularly a seafaring man and woman.
Excellent. Meanwhile, Watson and I should pursue our own inquiries in Croydon and elsewhere. It is often in the overlooked corner that the truth lies hidden.
Chase. Leaving the yard, we once more took to our cab. Holmes was unusually silent, his brows knit, his long fingers tapping upon his knee in that peculiar rhythm which I had come to recognize as the prelude to some great mental exertion. You are uneasy, Holmes?
Not uneasy, Watson, merely dissatisfied. The theory fits too well. Real life is seldom so obliging as to present all its clues in a neat row. When it does, I am compelled to suspect that one of them is false.
We drove then, not to Croydon, but to the General Post Office, where Holmes requested a scrutiny of the Liverpool mail of the past 2 days. It was not long before we stood in possession of the knowledge that the parcel had indeed been posted from the port city, and by a hand so clumsy that it could scarce guide a pen.
Illiterate, seafaring, clumsy. Once again, the husband in Liverpool looms before us. And yet, Watson, there is that which jars.
Hmm, what is that?
The address. Why, Miss Susan Cushing? If revenge against the wife were his aim, would he not send the parcel to her directly?
Unless he wished to wound both sisters at once. If now,
Possible, but not, I think, probable. No. There is another explanation lurking, half glimpsed in the shadows of this case.
evening was now drawing on, the glare of the day softening to a smoky twilight, we returned to Baker Street where Mrs. Hudson had laid out our supper. Yet neither Holmes nor I could do more than toy with the food, so absorbed were we in the singular problem. After the meal, Holmes produced his chemical apparatus, buying briar, and for some hours the sitting room was filled with the acrid fumes of experiments upon the salt from the box. He tested it with litmus, with reagents, and even subjected it to flame, until at last he sat back with a satisfied nod.
As I suspected, the salt is not wholly English. Oh, there are traces of a foreign component, sodium chloride mingled with magnesium, such as one finds in Mediterranean evaporation ponds. Our sailor has not merely been in Liverpool. He has voyaged south, perhaps to the Levant or North Africa.
Then the case is broader than we imagined.
Infinitely broader, Watson, and the noose tightens, not around one man, but around a circle of guilt.
As he spoke, a sharp rap came upon the door. Lestrade entered, his manner brisk with news.
Holmes, we've had word back from Liverpool. A woman, Mary Cushing, is missing from her lodgings there. Vanished 2 days ago. And with her, another boarder from the same house, a man described as dark, foreign looking, and of powerful build.
God, that matches with your deductions, Holmes.
It does indeed, though it complicates as much as it confirms. Tell me, Lestrade, what of the husband?
He is said to be in port, but no one has seen him since last week. His ship, the Sea Queen, docked from the Mediterranean 4 days ago.
Ah, the Mediterranean. Once more the salt speaks the truth.
Holmes sprang to his feet, his eyes blazing with the thrill of the chase.
Watson, prepare yourself. We leave for Liverpool on the morning train. This affair will not be settled in Baker Street, nor even in London. Its roots lie deep in the docks of the great seaport, and there, amid tar and salt water, we shall find the rest of the tale.
Thus the second act of this strange drama closed, leaving me restless yet exhilarated. I could not but marvel at the manner in which Holmes, by a handful of trifles, had constructed a scaffold of reasoning that already reached across the breadth of England. And yet, in his restless eyes, I read that even he did not yet behold the full outline of the crime, but only its dark and jagged shadow. Morning dawned heavy and oppressive, a thick fog mingling with the smoke of the city, until London seemed wrapped in a pall of its own making. We rose early, and by 7:30, Holmes and I were seated in a first-class carriage of the train to Liverpool, Lestrade joining us at the last moment with his usual briskness.
Well, Holmes, I hope you're right about this. The Yard doesn't often dispatch an inspector to the provinces without good reason.
Fear not, Lestrade. You will have your reason, and more than one before we are done.
With that, Holmes withdrew into his own thoughts, his long fingers steepled, his gaze fixed upon the swirling countryside beyond the window. I knew better than to intrude upon his meditations, though more than once I caught the faint curl of his lip or the sudden gleam of his eye that told me some inner revelation was already dawning upon him. It was late afternoon when we reached Liverpool, that bustling port whose very air seemed saturated with salt and tar. Ships lay thick upon the Mersey, their masts like a forest of bare branches against the sky, while the cries of sailors and the rumble of carts filled the air with ceaseless din. Wapa-da-ba-ba-ba-up-up. The very air here speaks of the sea, Holmes.
Indeed, Watson, it is the breath of adventure and of crime, where men gather from the ends of the earth. Passions also gather, fierce and ungoverned.
At the station, we were met by Inspector Hawkins of the Liverpool Police, a stout, red-faced man whose manner was genial enough, though I observed a touch of skepticism when his eyes fell upon Holmes.
So you're the London expert, eh? They say you can tell a man's life story from the cut of his boot.
From the boot, the gait, the hand, the ash upon his coat. Yes, Inspector. All these are the alphabet from which a man's history may be read.
Chuckling. Well, we'll see if your alphabet can spell out the riddle of Mary Cushing.
He led us through the bustling streets to a modest lodging house near the docks, Curzia, where Mary Cushing had lived. The landlady, a thin, anxious woman with sharp eyes, met us at the door.
Gentlemen, you're come about. Poor Miss Cushing, I'll warrant, she left her room 2 nights ago and never returned.
Did she leave alone?
Not alone, sir. She was seen in company with a dark, foreign-looking man. Big fellow he was, with a heavy moustache. They walked towards the docks together.
And her husband, did he ever come here?
I too often for my liking. Rough sort of man, always quarrelling. There were times I feared for her safety.
And what of her possessions? Has her room been disturbed?
Not a thing taken, sir. Her clothes hang as she left them, her little trinkets upon the dresser. It was as if she stepped out for an hour and vanished into the sea. Uh,
Holmes examined the small chamber with his usual precision, his eyes noting every trifle, his hands caressing the dust upon the mantel, the scratches upon the floorboards. At length he paused by the window.
See here, Watson. These marks upon the sill, fingernails scraping desperately, and upon the paint, this dark smear.
Blood.
Exactly. She did not leave willingly.
By heaven, Holmes, you're right. She was dragged from this room.
Dragged, but not without a struggle. And note, the marks are recent, 2 days at most. The trail is still warm.
From the lodging house, we proceeded to the docks, that labyrinth of warehouses and taverns where every tongue of Europe and the Orient mingled in a babel of voices. Hawkins led us to a small police office where reports from the waterfront were kept.
Here we are. A docker claims to have seen a woman answering Mary Cushing's description being hustled aboard a small vessel 2 nights ago. She was with a Swabi man and another sailor.
And the vessel?
A Brit called the Sophie Anderson, bound for the Mediterranean. She sailed yesterday morning.
The Mediterranean again. The chain tightens.
But Holmes, if she has been carried abroad, how then do we account for the ears sent to her sister?
Precisely, Watson. There lies the riddle. If Mary herself be among the living, then whose ears were those?
Perhaps the husband killed another woman to cast suspicion elsewhere.
Perhaps, but suspicion is not proof. We must pursue facts, not fancies.
Jappingan. We spent the remainder of that day interviewing sailors, dockhands, and tavern keepers, each of whom furnished scraps of information but no complete picture. One man swore he had seen Mary in a tavern with her husband, both in high quarrel. Another insisted she had departed with a foreigner whose accent was Spanish. All agreed upon one thing, that the matter reeked of violence and secrecy. That night, weary but restless, we returned to our lodgings in Liverpool. Holmes flung himself upon the bed without removing his boots, staring at the ceiling in profound thought. I sat opposite, my medical journal forgotten in my lap, my eyes fixed upon his sharp, eagle-like profile. Holmes, do you truly believe Mary still lives?
I believe, Watson, that until we see her body, we must treat her as among the living. To do otherwise is to surrender reason to conjecture.
And the ears?
That, Watson, is the darkest corner of all. But remember, there were two, a man and a woman. If not Mary, then some other woman and her companion. Who were they? Why were they dispatched to Miss Cushing? Until we can answer that, the truth will remain veiled.
Long into the night I lay awake, the cries of the seaport drifting through the window, ringing with my own uneasy thoughts. I could not dispel the vision of that cardboard box, its salt and its ghastly contents, nor the conviction that somewhere upon those dark waters a terrible drama was even then being enacted. Morning brought no relief. We were summoned by Hawkins to the riverside mortuary, where two bodies had been brought ashore that dawn, found floating near the docks. With a chill premonition, we followed the inspector into the cold chamber. There, upon the slabs, lay a man and a woman, their faces bloated by the water, but their forms still recognizable. Holmes, these must be the owners of the ears.
Undoubtedly, Watson. Observe, their mutilation is precise. The ears were removed after death.
But who are they?
That, gentlemen, is the question which will unlock this whole affair.
And so part 3 of this strange adventure closed with two corpses before us, a vanished woman and a sailor husband whose shadow loomed ever darker across the waters of Liverpool. Few scenes in my long association with Holmes stand more vividly before my mind's eye than that chill air chamber in Liverpool, where the drowned man and woman lay stretched upon their slabs. Pale light filtering through the high window cast ghastly shadows upon the walls, and the dull roar of the river outside seemed to mingle with the silence of death within. Holmes bent over the bodies with the calm intensity of a surgeon, his keen gaze traveling from feature to feature and from wound to wound.
Observe, Watson, the condition of the hands, calloused, stained with pitch. This man was a sailor beyond question. The tattoos upon his forearm, anchor, mermaid, initials in crude blue, suggest long service and a rough life.
Hmm. And the woman,
More delicate. See the ring upon her finger, though cheap and brass. A poor household, but a married one. And yet, their faces look closely, Watson.
I shuddered as I obeyed, for beneath the swelling of the water, the features bore a strange resemblance to those I had glimpsed in Miss Susan Cushing's photograph album. Holmes, can it be?
Yes, Watson, I have little doubt. This man is Alec Fairbairn, and this woman, Sarah Cushing's sister to Susan and Mary.
A silence fell over the little chamber, broken only by Lestrade's sharp exclamation.
By heaven, if that be true, then the case is blacker than I thought. Sarah Cushing herself among the victims.
It is true enough. The ears we received in Baker Street were theirs. A ghastly epistle indeed, meant to strike Susan with horror. But to what end?
Then Mary still lives?
So it seems. And the husband, her sailor, stands now at the very center of the web.
Inspector Hawkins, who had listened with growing astonishment, now spoke with sudden resolve.
We must find this sailor at once. His ship, the Sea Queen, is still in port. If he is not aboard, we'll smoke him out from the taverns.
Within an hour, we stood upon the creaking deck of the Sea Queen, a weather-worn vessel with sails patched and ropes tarred. The crew eyed us with surly curiosity as Hawkins demanded their master. At length, a figure emerged from the forecastle, a broad-shouldered man, black-haired, with a face burned dark by foreign suns. His eyes glowed with a restless fire, and his jaw was set in the grim line of one accustomed to command.
You are Jim Browner, husband of Mary Cushing?
Aye, that's my name. And what of it?
You are wanted for questioning in connection with the deaths of Sarah Cushing and Alec Fairbairn.
With a harsh laugh. Then you may as well clap irons on me now. I've naught to hide.
The sailors muttered among themselves as Hawkins placed the man under arrest. Holmes, however, raised a hand.
One moment, Inspector. Let us hear the man. There is truth in his eyes, and perhaps confession on his lips.
Aye, I'll tell it, for it burns in me. I loved Mary, loved her with all the strength in my body. But her sisters, they hated me, poisoned her mind against me. That cur Fairbairn, he was ever slinking about her, whispering lies. I saw them together, saw how his hand lingered on hers. By the Lord, I could not bear it.
You slew them?
I did. I found them one night, close as man and woman can be, and all reason left me. I struck him down, and her too, for she had betrayed her blood. The river took their bodies, but I sent their ears to Susan, that she might know what comes of crossing Jim Browner.
You villain. You'll hang for this.
Softly, Lestrade. Let him finish. Let him finish.
Finish. There's little more. Mary, my Mary, fled from me in terror. I never touched her. She is innocent of all but weakness. If she lives, may God shield her. As for me, I am ready. Let them do their worst.
He stood there, unflinching, a strange dignity in his rugged frame, as though the fury which had driven him was now utterly spent. Holmes regarded him with grave attention.
It is a grim tale, Mr. Browner, and a just confession. The law will take its course. But before it does, permit me one question. Why the ears? Why not leave the bodies to speak their own message?
Because words are empty, Mr. Holmes. Susan cursed me, drove Mary from me, scorned me to my face. I would send her a token she could not deny, a horror that would haunt her waking and sleeping. That was my vengeance.
He spoke with such savage simplicity that even Lestrade, for all his official indignation, was struck silent. Hawkins ordered him away under guard, and we were left once more upon the dockside, the cries of the gulls ringing overhead. Holmes, the case is solved then. Criminal!
Solved. Yes, and yet what a melancholy solution! Here we have no master criminal, no subtle plot, only the old eternal passions. Love turned to jealousy, jealousy to rage, and rage to murder.
He sighed, and for once there was no triumph in his tone, but rather a weary sadness.
You see, Watson, how the grandest mysteries often resolve into the simplest truths. It is the human heart, not the human intellect, that breeds the darkest crimes.
What being one? That evening, as we sat in the Liverpool inn, Holmes paced the room restlessly, his hands clasped behind his back. You are troubled still, Holmes.
Troubled, yes, for though justice is satisfied, happiness is not. Think of poor Mary, bereft of husband and sisters alike. Think of Susan, haunted by that ghastly parcel. The law may hang Jim Browner, but who shall heal the hearts he has shattered?
Cousin, that lies beyond our art, Holmes.
True, Watson. Deduction may trace the path of crime, but it cannot erase its stain.
His voice fell into silence, and I perceived that behind the cold mask of logic there beat a heart not untouched by pity. Thus the grim affair of the cardboard box drew towards its close, though its shadows lingered long in our memory. And yet, though Browner's confession seemed to lay all bare, Holmes was not wholly satisfied. He spoke little upon our return journey to London, but more than once I caught his lips moving silently, as though some unspoken thought still vexed him. I was to learn ere long that the affair held one last revelation, a moral rather than a material one, which Holmes deemed too weighty to be omitted from his final analysis. The return journey to London was conducted in a silence which I did not venture to break. Holmes sat opposite me in the railway carriage, his arms folded, his eyes half closed, his long profile silhouetted against the blur of flying hedgerows. It was the very image of abstraction, and I knew that though his body sat before me, his mind roved still among the shadows of Liverpool and the drowned figures upon the mortuary slab. By the time we once more ascended the familiar steps of 221B Baker Street, night had fallen, and a cool breeze had at last dispersed the oppressive heat which had lain upon the city. Mrs. Hudson, with her customary solicitude, had prepared a light supper, but Holmes waved it aside, lighting instead his long pipe and pacing the room in restless fashion. Holmes, you seem ill at ease, though the case is concluded.
Concluded, yes, but solved, that is another matter.
You astound me. We have Browner's confession corroborated by the evidence. What more is required?
Confession and evidence suffice for the law, Watson. For truth, we must probe deeper.
He seated himself at last, drawing long clouds of smoke into the room, through which his keen eyes gleamed like those of a prophet in trance.
Consider, Watson, Browner is no common criminal. He is a man of strong affections, roughened by the sea, but capable of deep devotion. His love for Mary was the ruling passion of his life. Yet that very passion, crossed and perverted, became the fuel of murder.
Love turned to jealousy, jealousy to rage, a tale as old as man. Ha 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 ha.
Precisely. And therein lies the true lesson of this case. Not in the mechanics of deduction, though those were instructive, but in the frailty of human passion. What is love, Watson, when stripped of reason? A flame which consumes not only its object, but its bearer.
His voice had a depth of melancholy I seldom heard in him. He leaned forward, tapping the ashes from his pipe, and his gaze fell upon me with sudden intensity.
Tell me, Watson, what did you learn from this affair?
That the smallest trifles, salt in a box, handwriting upon a label, may point the way to the greatest truths.
A fair answer, and yet not complete. Trifles guide us, but it is the heart that explains them. The salt told us of the sea, the handwriting of the hand that scrawled it. But only the passions of men explain why those ears were severed, why they were sent to Croydon, why Susan Cushing was chosen as the recipient. Without understanding the human soul, the science of deduction is a skeleton without flesh.
I sat back, struck by the solemnity of his words. It was not often that Holmes allowed his reasoning to drift from the material to the moral, and when he did so, it was as though some curtain were drawn back, revealing depths hitherto unseen. You speak almost as a moralist, Holmes.
And why not? Crime is the supreme human drama, Watson. Strip away the disguises, and you will find 9 times in 10 that love or hatred sits enthroned within it. We may pride ourselves upon logic, upon inference, upon the tracing of ash or footprints. But beneath it all beats the primal heart. That is why this case weighs upon me. I see not a villain brought to justice, but a man destroyed by the very passion that once ennobled him.
He rose and stood before the window, his tall figure outlined against the lamps of Baker Street, his voice lower now, as though speaking less to me than to himself.
Jealousy, Watson, is a green-eyed monster that spares none. It mocks logic. It deafens reason. It devours the soul until all that remains is violence. Browner was its prey, as many before him, as many yet to come.
For some minutes he remained thus, lost in meditation, while I sat in silence, respecting his mood. At length he turned again, and a faint smile softened the severity of his features.
But let us not end on shadows. For all its horrors, the case was not without instruction. Did you observe, for instance, the sequence of deductions concerning the salt?
I did, though I confess I could not have reached your conclusion unaided.
Yet you might, had you trusted to observation. Salt from our own coasts contains chiefly sodium chloride, but this had a faint admixture of magnesium salts, betraying a southern origin. Hoo, 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 hoo. Thus I knew the sailor had voyaged to the Mediterranean, a trifle, yet the key to the larger pattern.
I begin to see, Holmes, though dimly, how each detail is a letter in the alphabet of crime, Sajing.
Exactly, Watson. And once you can read that alphabet fluently, the book of life lies open before you.
His eyes gleamed with sudden animation, and I recognized once more the Holmes I knew best, the cold reasoner, exulting in his art, yet always with that strange undercurrent of humanity which at times would break through, as it had this night. Kino too. So by his side, the clock upon the mantel struck midnight. Holmes knocked the ashes from his pipe, stretched himself, and smiled with something of his old sardonic humor.
And now, my dear Watson, let us to bed. Tomorrow, some fresh folly of mankind will doubtless claim our attention. For tonight, let us leave jealousy to the poets and sleep to the weary.
Thus ended the adventure of the cardboard box. To Holmes, it was one more link in the long chain of human folly he had traced with his merciless logic. To me, it was a reminder that beneath the science of deduction there lies always the beating heart of man, capable of love, of jealousy, and of crime, the audacity. And in that duality, in the clash between logic and passion, lay the true fascination of life beside Sherlock Holmes.